So the weather's been a little bit so the weather's been a little bit wacky here over the last couple days or over the last week. It was I think like 85 on Tuesday. And I figured, oh, thank goodness, it's, spring and summer are coming again. It's finally going to be warm again, and I am not used to winters in the location that I live in now, where it actually snows. I grew up in southern and central, or central and southern and central California, uh, where the coldest it ever got was, or or the coldest it ever got in the daytime was, in the 40s. You know, that was oh my God, grab me a parka weather to me. Um, now I get snow. Now I get days that top out at 19 degrees. Um, and the way my house is heated, I don't have to heat the whole house. I've got they're called baseboard heaters, and I can just heat a room in my house. And so, generally in the winter, what I do, and this is my second winter here now, is I tend to only heat my bedroom, and I stay inside, and I play way too much on the computer, and don't spend nearly enough time in the shop or outside, or doing anything productive really at all. And it's a great time. I've got a great excuse for 3 or 4 months to just sit there and play StarCraft or Minecraft or Dune or Age of Empires or one of the games that I enjoy playing. Um, but it got to like 80, 82, 85 the other day, and I'm thinking, oh, thank goodness, it's gonna start warming up again. And I went out and I cleaned out my car, um, because it had accumulated. As I mentioned before, I don't litter, and you can tell by the inside of my car. And I generally, honestly, keep a trash bag inside my car. I don't just throw garbage around in my car anymore. Um, but it was time to take the garbage out, so to speak. And you know, I live in a bunch of dirt or sand, and as you might figure, that tracks in on my feet every time I climb in on my car, or every time I climb into my car. So I took the vacuum and I sucked a bunch of that out. And, the car's, it's not looking like it was when I got it, but it's not looking um, like it was before I started cleaning it either. So it was a good day. Um, and then the next day it's 46 degrees. And so much for, warm weather coming. So I stayed inside in my room, heater on 60, which is apparently warm enough for me when I put my sweats and a sweater on. And I watched a movie. Oddly enough, it's on YouTube, and I'm not suggesting it's a fun movie. I'm not suggesting it for you. I don't think anybody else would enjoy it. But it's called On Any Sunday, and it's from 1971. And the reason I remember it and remember it so fondly was because it was a movie about motorcycle racing, um, and it was a movie my dad took at least my brother and I to, if not my brother and sister and I. I honestly don't remember if she came along, though I would imagine she did. Um, and it brought back a lot of memories about growing up around motorcycles, which I did. My dad had a real simple rule for riding a motorcycle. As long as you could stand with your butt on the seat and your 2 feet flat on the ground, and you could lift it from its side back onto its tires, then he didn't care what it was, you could ride it. That was his rule. And his thought was that if you got too tired to ride, you could always sit there on the motorcycle and rest with your butt on the seat, right, and your 2 feet on the ground until you got enough energy to go ride again. And if you tipped, you could pick it back up. Those so you could be relatively self-sufficient on a motorcycle, which in hindsight makes perfect sense, and even at the time did. When I got my current motorcycle, which is a big old Harley road bike, obviously I tested the can I sit with my butt in the chair or butt in the seat, which is kind of more like a couch cushion, with my feet on the ground, and yeah, that was no problem. And this thing weighs 1,300 pounds. I wasn't really interested in finding out if I could pick her up from a fall. I eventually had to figure out that yes, I could. One day in a parking lot at the grocery store, and I was, I'd been riding maybe a couple weeks now, and I was Mr. Cool. I was obviously, I'd done 100 miles, and knew everything there, remembered everything there was about riding motorcycles, and tipped, because I, cranked the wheel around too hard at too slow of a speed. I've named my bike Bella. There's no Twilight reference. She's just a real pretty bike, so I call her Bella. And I tipped over in Bella, and I was the only one there. As I've mentioned before, adrenaline's a hell of a drug, and given the right motivation and the proper amount of adrenaline, yes, I can pick her up from her side to her tires again. I really wish I didn't know that, but it's also nice to know that I can, I guess. But On Any Sunday was a movie, like I said, about dirt biking, and a little bit about dirt bike motor speedway and trials riding and stuff like that. It's very dated. One of the first things I noticed is they were all just wearing jeans and sweaters. Nobody had 47 different company logos on their chest. Nobody was sponsored by anybody. These guys were out there riding because they loved riding, which was exactly the reason I rode. And I grew up on motorcycles in the dirt and the sand. I mean, we had this spot down the hill that we used to be able to go. We had a motorcycle at the house, at Mom's house. Obviously, we had them at Dad's house. But we had one at Mom's house, too, that we were allowed to ride around in the dirt where I grew up when I was still young. It was 3 housing tracks set into this just wide open valley. It has since become all houses, but at the time it wasn't, and there were whole bunches of hills and stuff that you could ride in, and we got it was a nothing motorcycle. I think it was a Honda 100, and we could take it down the hill and we could ride it around in the dirt, provided that we, followed my even at my mom's house, provided that we followed my dad's riding rules. Always wear boots, always wear jeans, always wear a helmet. Um, and and then we had to follow my stepfather's rules too, which were, since we were both well under 16, I mean, I was maybe 11 or 12. We also couldn't ride it on the street, and we had to push it up this god awful hill to get it home. Um, it was paved and everything. It was a neighborhood, but it was still just this god awful hill to push a motorcycle on. Have to push a motorcycle up after you've spent the last 4 or 5 hours riding in the dirt. My brother and I would take turns. He'd get 10 minutes or 4 laps or whatever, and I'd get 10 minutes or 4 laps or whatever, and we'd spend a couple hours out of mom's hair. Um, Things were so much different. You could just, I mean, when I was little, when I just learned how to ride a bike, that's what we would do all day. My brother and I would get on our bikes and we'd just ride till we got hungry and come home for lunch, and then be home by the time the street lights were on. Those were our two rules that we had to follow. I wouldn't let my kids play outside the front of the house without me out there watching them. I don't know if that made me paranoid or it doesn't matter. That's not what I came here to talk about. Um, my brother had a friend, a coworker, and I think this is the best way to describe him. He wouldn't break the rules, but he would certainly bend them to his favor. For instance, if for some, I mean, this is when I was working a desk job answering phones, um, eh, we had a rule where you couldn't take your shoes off. Um, so he never did. He took them off one at a time. And the rule said shoes, meaning more than one. Um, my brother was the same way about not riding the motorcycle home. And in fact, we wouldn't ride it home. Uh, but he would start the engine and he would stand beside it and he would put it in first gear and he would throttle it and the motorcycle would move itself. And he'd walk or run or jog beside it as we were headed. I mean, on the flatland, we'd push it, no big deal. But when it came to these, like I said, horrible hills, he let the motorcycle push itself, is the way he described it. Um, and that happened till the first time that my stepfather was headed to the store, coming down the hill that we were headed up. That didn't go really well for either of us. Um, he made it more clear what he meant, that the motorcycle was not to be turned on if we were not, in the dirt. Um, a little bit clearer. Um, it was good times, but I watched this movie on any Sunday, and it really brought me back to those very early days of just free riding in the dirt. My brother got busted once for riding through a farmer's field, just because it was nice and flat and it had all as you will, the little humps from everything being planted, right? And he wanted to treat those like whoop-de-doos. So he went riding sideways, across grain, for lack of a better term, in the field, and got busted for that. See, the problem was that we lived on a hill, and the area that we rode in was just down the hill from where we lived, which meant that, from the backyard, it was easy to see what we were up to. Let me just put it like that. Um, and I know my mom spied on us a lot. I mean, watched over us a lot. No, I was right the first time. Um, but you know, it's just because she loved us, whatever. And in hindsight, just thinking about it for the first time now, that's why my stepfather went to the store, because he never went to the store. That was always mom's job. Um, he always had something better to do than go to the I mean, that's funny. That's one of those things you just think about, you know, 1,000 years later and come up with. Anyway, still have a motorcycle now. Haven't ridden her really more than just to turn the tires since I moved out here. Um, I lost my riding buddy a couple years ago, and it's tougher to ride alone. Um, when you get used to having somebody you can ride next to. Um, and a whole bunch of really horrible excuses and no good reasons why I haven't. I just haven't. Um, so I need to do that. So I need you guys to motivate me to get Bella legal in this state for this summer, so I can start riding again, because I think that's something I would enjoy. So please say something motivational in the comments, or send me a text, whatever. Um, I think that's all I've got for today. So stay blessed